are following this radio show, it's Defectos de Sonido. So every Tuesday, we have good information. We try to have as many interviews we can. And today we are lucky to have one representative from Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department that it's working in something that we don't put too much attention, but we should. And you will discover why, especially all those that we are lucky to have in this beautiful place here in Tacoma-Pierce County, but maybe not so lucky after we see this presentation. But we will learn how to protect ourselves, how to take care of our family and our pets, our basically every living thing that we have in our house and outside. So please stay with us. Gracias por su paciencia a todos aquellos que nos escuchan y que están practicando su inglés. Hoy va a ser una muy buena oportunidad para que lo sigan haciendo porque vamos a tener muy buena información también. Aquellos que vivimos en Tacoma-Pierce County, hoy tenemos un representante del Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department que está con nosotros para proveer información que casi no le ponemos mucha atención a la tierra, a lo que hay alrededor de nuestra casa y a lo que se mete a nuestra casa en nuestros zapatos. So ladies and gentlemen, we have Walt Burdsall. And he is, like I said before, he works for the Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department, and his mission is to make sure that everybody in this area get to know about this type of soil, the type of earth we are stepping on, what we play with it sometimes when we are out of working in our garden, for those that we enjoy planting vegetables and kind to prepping the ground, the soil for maybe having some delicious vegetables and some fruits in our own garden, or even for those that we just stay for a little bit on the yard, but we step on over the soil and we bring that into our homes. That's what we're going to talk about today, because he has very good, important information for us to know. So please, Walt, thank you for being for sharing your screen now for those that are following this presentation on YouTube and Facebook, BT Radio Universal. And for those that are listening also through the 106.5 low power FM in South King County, well, you have friends and family in this in Pierce County. So if they don't get to hear about this, maybe you can be a good family member or good friend, and you can just tell, hey, watch this show, watch this presentation. It's important for you. So we're going to be also describing some of the pictures that, some of the graphics that Walt are going to be showing in this presentation for our listeners through the radio, of course, PT Radio Universal. So, well, go ahead and start with this presentation, and I'm going to be translating. I'm going to be doing summaries in Spanish for those that are still practicing their English. So how about that?
Sounds good.
All right. Excellent. So go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me today. It's a very good opportunity that I have here to tell you something about an old smelter that we had here in Tacoma, and I'll explain all about that. But my presentation is called the Tacoma Smelter Plume Dirt Alert. And what it is back about many years ago, the Tacoma area had a copper smelter that smelted copper for about 100 years. And we're going to go through some pictures and some information about the old smelter and kind of what it's left behind for us. We'll talk a little bit about the history and kind of the area that it affected, some of the health risks that might be connected to it, and some of the things that you can do to stay healthy around working around soil that might have some pollution in it, and kind of what's been done, and then some resources for you. And we'll have we could answer any questions that you have too if you want to send in any questions, and I'll be available. Of course, I'll give you my contact information at the end, and you can contact me directly if you have any questions.
Okay.
Some of the history of the old Tacoma smelter. The smelter was located in Ruston, Washington, which is near Point Defiance Park here in Tacoma, if you're familiar with the large Point Defiance Park. And right next to Point Defiance Park is what's now known as the Point Ruston development. If you go down there, there's now restaurants and hotels. There's a grocery store, and there's lots of apartments and condominiums there. And you can take a walk along the waterfront. That's where the old smelter site was, right there in Tacoma. And they smelted copper for about 100 years, from about 1890 to about 1986. And then the Environmental Protection Agency, the United States government Environmental Protection Agency, took the site over after the site had closed in about 1986 and started to clean up some of the contamination. And when I say contamination, I'll explain that as we go through here a little bit more. And then the Department of Ecology, the Washington State Department of Ecology, started a program for cleaning up yards that were near, in and around the smelter, along with the Environmental Protection Agency. And then the Washington State received about $188 million from a bankruptcy lawsuit from the company that ran the smelter. And they're using that money now to educate folks about the arsenic and lead that might be in soil, and also clean up some of the areas. The smelter stack was a 562-foot smokestack that was located down there in Ruston near Point Defiance. It was almost as high as the Space Needle. And I can remember when I first lived here, you could see Tacoma from a long way off because you could see the old smelter stack. And what they did was the smeltering process is where they take ore from, or it was 500, it was, yeah, it's just the smelters, or the needle is about 600 feet high anyway. The smelting process is where they take ore, they bring it in on ships. This is huge rocks, and melt out the copper. There's lead that was melted out. There was even silver and some gold in these rocks. And in that process, they heated the rocks to thousands of degrees to be able to melt out the ore. Well, in the process of doing that, they also had a smoke that went out in the air, emitted out into the air. And in that smoke was arsenic and lead. And it floated in the air and it landed on the surface of the soil. And there, when it hit the surface of the soil on a yard or a playground or anywhere, it would bind with the topsoil. So what that means is it does a chemical connection with the topsoil. And even though the smelter is no longer there, the arsenic and lead are still found in the soil. So that's where our concern is, because arsenic and lead are both kind of a toxic poison pollution that's in the soil. And when people might be working in the soil or playing in the soil, they could come in contact with it. Here's kind of a sketch of how it happened. The smoke would come out of the smokestack, float along in the air, and eventually settle on the ground in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Let me make a stop there, Walt, for a moment. Sure. Because I know that a lot of our audience are bilingual or are in the process of becoming bilingual by learning English. Most of our audience, they speak Spanish. Y lo que estamos diciendo en esta tarde, bueno, lo que nos está compartiendo Walt, que es muy, muy importante, nos está dando una pieza de historia de los que vivimos aquí en la ciudad de Tacoma. Conocemos hoy, tal vez más que en otros años, hoy más que nunca, un lugar muy importante llamado Ruston Point. Ruston Point es ahora un lugar pues muy bonito para visitar, yo diría que muy turístico, también es uno de los lugares más concurridos ahora en estas tardes de verano para ir a andar en bicicleta, andar en patines, caminar simplemente. Tiene una vista fabulosa al lado de lo que ahora, bueno, son unos condominios, unos departamentos alimentos. De hecho, hay un mercado ahora permanente allí, un mercado para ir y comprar, pues, desde flores a frutas, ¿no? Vegetales. También hay un cine, también hay restaurantes ahí. Realmente, pues, se convirtió en un lugar muy diferente a como estábamos viendo ahorita las fotografías, los que están viendo esta presentación a través de las redes sociales. Pero no siempre fue así. Hace muchos, muchos años, más o menos en 1890, es que había allí un lugar que era un horno de fundición. Era un horno de fundición para la creación de cobre principalmente y otros materiales. Nos platica Walt que en ese proceso, ¿no? Se traían rocas muy grandes y pues de todos tamaños y se fundían a una temperatura de más de 1000, cerca de los 1000 grados centígrados. Entonces, imagínense, pues la temperatura que hacía que estas piedras se fundieran, ¿no? Se pudieran extraer o separar los materiales a través de otros procesos, ¿verdad? Más complicados, pero se llegaba a obtener inclusive oro, plata, pero lo que más se buscaba, pues, era el cobre. Obviamente todo lo que se calienta siempre tiene que tener un escape, ¿verdad? Siempre tiene que tener un lugar por donde emitir emisiones, porque si no, imagínense, pues estaría en peligro de que explotara, ¿no? Con toda esa temperatura. Entonces, como él nos mostró en esta pipa, ¿no? Tenía un escape, una salida, una chimenea casi del tamaño del Space Needle, ¿no? Así de grande. Entonces, bueno, pues imagínense toda el área que alcanzaba a cubrir, pues todos esos gases, esas partículas muy pequeñas que contenían principalmente plomo y arsénico, que pues con el tiempo se descubrió que eran pues materiales muy peligrosos, muy nocivos para la salud. Entonces, vamos a continuar con esta explicación porque todas estas partículas desafortunadamente lograron quedar y pues agarrar pues lugar por muchos años en lo que ahora conocemos como nuestros jardines, ¿verdad? Nuestros patios traseros. Entonces es por eso que estamos teniendo esta presentación. Okay, well, thank you so much for stopping. Now, please keep going. I can see now the map and it's very large. I mean, I saw also the size of that pipe that was
Right.
pretty equal to what we know now as the Space Needle, which is very tall, very high.
It
So,
was.
yeah.
It was. And what they did, they built it that tall so the wind would carry the contamination or the arsenic and lead in the air. They kind of wanted to get it high enough to kind of blow it out of town, but unfortunately, that helped it spread throughout the land here. So if you look at this picture, you can see Tacoma. I don't know if you see my arrow there. Can you see my arrow?
Oh, yeah.
This is Tacoma. Point Defiance Park is right here, and there's where the little town of Ruston is. So the way the wind carries, the prevailing winds come in, if we get, usually in the wintertime when we're getting the fall and winter, when we get our rains, it comes kind of from the southwest, so the wind would carry the arsenic and lead across into Vashon Island and over into King County. So part of this is, of course, is involved, King County is involved with it. And what it did, the arsenic and lead would float in the air and then settle on the ground. And then also when we get the north winds, it would come across University Place, Tacoma University Place, Lakewood, DuPont, and all the way down in there. And also it included, of course, Northeast Tacoma and part of Federal Way too. So this is what we call the Tacoma Smelter plume area. And this is just a kind of a way to define where the smoke carry the arsenic and lead and where we find that it's landed on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you something,
Sure.
By looking at that map, so something that it brings it takes my attention is Gig Harbor is very close, to Point Defiance, and
Right.
and it's kind of out of the area, so that means you can make sure to show this map, knowing that somebody already did test on in that area.
Right.
The areas that are kind of out of this perimeter, this red line, or landmark. So you guys did already tests, right? Or like on that
Yes.
area to make sure that actually there is no evidence of contaminants in that on that territory.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because it is an oddly shaped area, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's due to the prevailing wind. It's the way the winds, we may not notice it, but typically there is a wind that either comes out of the southwest or it kind of comes out of the north and the northeast here. So it kind of carries that contamination in that line, and not so much east and west. That wind doesn't really occur. So therefore, places outside of the boundary have quite a lot less arsenic and lead that we find from the smelter, levels that aren't what we consider unhealthy levels. So therefore, that's why the shape of the plume is what it is. So that's a good question. They are very close, but yet because of that wind pattern, it really doesn't affect it very much. And we have tested, and that's how we came up with, and of course the Department of Ecology and the Environmental Protection Agency had done testing throughout the whole Tacoma region to define where this the plume is. So,
wow.
Right.
Es muy, muy interesante, queridos amigos y amigas, esto porque aquellos que están viendo esta presentación a través de Facebook o YouTube se van a dar cuenta que el mapa que encierra todas estas áreas en donde se han hecho pruebas y las áreas que quedaron fuera, la verdad es que es súper curioso la forma que tiene este mapa. La verdad es que para aquellos que no lo están viendo, déjenme describírselos, que hagan de cuenta como si fuera como si fuera un dinosaurio, ¿no? Con el cuerpo en la parte de arriba, lo que si lo viéramos en el mapa, cubre la isla de Vashon Island, cubre parte de lo que viene siendo el suroeste del área de Seattle un poquito. Hay ciudades como por ejemplo Buren, Des Moines, parte de Federal Way, no todo Federal Way, y la parte, el cuello y la cabeza del dinosaurio está apuntando hacia abajo, todo el camino hasta rebasar lo que conocemos como ahora como DuPont, más adelante de las bases militares. Y lo curioso es que, fíjense, Gig Harbor está del otro lado del puente, ¿verdad? Cruzando el Puget, ¿no? Una de las áreas más profundas de todo el mundo, pero está muy cerca de este lugar donde pues fue el epicentro de esta contaminación. Sin embargo, aunque está muy cerca, no pasó. Fue el viento que hizo cómo se dispersaran estos contaminantes a través del viento y de la topografía, ¿no? Pero como nos dice Walt, es el viento, la manera en la que sopla, los estudios que hicieron, se dieron cuenta y sacaron este mapa que ahora pues es lo más exacto que se tiene. Hicieron pruebas también, obviamente, de los territorios que quedan fuera y no encontraron pues nada de evidencia de que hubiera contaminación. Así que tenemos un mapa bastante bueno. So we have a very good map, Walt, to see, what areas need more attention, But
Yes.
and I live in East Tacoma, and I can see that the line, it's kind of they're leaving us out. When I thought, all the bad stuff happened in East Tacoma, but no, not really.
No,
I mean,
no, that's right.
So
it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Wow. Keep going with the presentation.
Okay.
I have already a couple of questions for you, but
Okay.
maybe you will answer those during the presentation.
Okay,
So
sounds great.
going.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one of the things that we do in the health department is we offer a free soil test. So if you're concerned about your home, if it's within the plume, or even if it's within a close proximity to the plume, we will test the soil for you. And what we do is we come in and we take some soil samples. We have a probe that we stick down and we take some soil samples, and then we get a reading of, we read arsenic and lead by parts per million, and we can tell you if there is an issue in your yard. And I'll talk about some things that you can do to kind of protect yourself. So that's something that we offer. And here again, my contact information will be at the end if you're interested in getting your soil tested. And that would be for homeowners and renters as well. And what we normally do with the renters is we work with the landlord, the person that owns the property, to get permission to take the soil samples from that area.
Right. Is there any charge for that test?
No, it's free. That is something that is part of the funded through the program.
Okay.
It's all free. Yep. And we would, if you have any questions at all about it, just give me a call or give me an email, and we'll set you up and just come by. It only takes us about 15 or 20 minutes to take the samples, and then we'll send you a report on it.
Okay. Wow.
A lot of people were concerned about what are the health risks. Okay, so if you come into contact with arsenic and lead, if you're out working in it, or kids are playing in the soil and the way that they might become exposed, I'll tell you about those exposures a little bit. But some of the things that it's not an immediate health risk, so you're not going to go out in your yard and get sick from it like right away. But if you have arsenic and lead in your system, it could cause long-term health issues like heart disease, perhaps diabetes and cancers way down the road. And also lead in a body causes for children developmental delays, and could cause be linked to behavior problems and things like that. So it's a matter of the way it works. There's a kind of a formula that the amount of risk you have is the amount of toxicity, or how much contamination, arsenic and lead, you might come in contact with, and just the amount of it. So that's kind of how scientists figure out how dangerous the arsenic and lead might be. Mm-hmm. And here are some ways that people can come in contact or get exposed to arsenic and lead. Of course, kids out playing outside, it might be toddlers, getting dirt on their hands and then putting their hands in their mouths, or breathing dust, or maybe even getting soil on their toys and then in their mouth. So that's a way that they may get arsenic and lead in their body just by what we call ingestion, which is basically swallowing it as kids are out playing. And kids love to play in the dirt, and we still want them to play in the dirt, of course. Mm-hmm. But just being careful of when you're out playing, maybe coming in and washing your hands really well, and not putting your hands in mouth and stuff like that, or breathing dust. That's another way that you can get arsenic and lead, is if you were to breathe it in. That's another thing. And then of course, people out gardening, digging in the soil, and also people that are working in perhaps landscaping or working in soil. There's always a possibility that when you're out working in it, that you could be exposed mainly from the dust that could be carried. We'll talk a little bit about some ways to protect yourself while you're working in the soil. That's one way. And of course, construction, dust being created by dirt that's moved around. The Department of Ecology, that's part of their program, is they're replacing some of the soils that are really close to, in homes that are really close to the smelter, where the levels of arsenic and lead were really high. They offer to come in and take a foot of soil out of the yard and replace it with new soil. That's actually only happening mostly closer to the smelter, kind of north of Highway 16 and east of Pearl Street. Closer you get to the smelter, the more contamination, of course, there may be. So they're replacing soil there. Outside of that area, we just educate folks of things that we can do to just form a barrier and maybe keep from coming in contact with that soil.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to maybe let me translate this really quick, but go ahead. Let's. I'll wait to a point.
Okay. Well, this is just a picture that we have on file, just to give you an example of what. This is probably pretty much an extreme. Is somebody out mowing their lawn while the smelter, was in operation until the 80s. And I can remember, I've been in Tacoma for a number of years, and I can remember riding my bicycle down along the waterfront when the smelter was in operation, and you could smell the sulfur. You could actually taste the sulfur in the air, and that's how it was. What was like, and of course the smelter employed about 1,200 people, so it was a big major employer for the city of Tacoma and helped put Tacoma on the map. And a lot of people, of course, made their living working there. And it was good for that. But of course, sometimes there's not so good things that come from some of the factories that we have. And this is just, like I said, an extreme example. We've also heard from people that went to elementary school up in Ruston, and there were days that the kids weren't allowed to go outside and play at recess because there was too much of the smoke contamination in the air. So it was a thing happening. Obviously, it was kind of dangerous, but maybe the good thing now is the smelter's gone. There's not that pollution being emitted into the air now. And all we have still is the arsenic and lead. They're on the soil. And one of the things about that, because arsenic and lead are both elements, they don't break down. They're on the periodic table, from your old science class, maybe. You can remember on the periodic table, those are elements. So they don't break down. They'll be here like indefinite period. And what happens is they bind with that organics in the topsoil, so they sit right on top of the soil. And that's where our concern is, that people are digging in it, or kids are playing in it, or pets are digging in it, like dogs, and then tracking it in the house, and then it could become dust.
Wow, that's that's something really hard to take, I will say, for those that. Right. I mean, it was important to have that kind of an industry, but the cost was too high. And maybe on those days, on those years, we didn't know a lot of the consequences that
that's absolutely right.
Materials like lead and arsenic, could cause on the human. So
that's true.
Well, lo que nos acaba de compartir en esta parte, Walt, es ¿por qué estamos hablando lo importante, verdad? Porque una cosa fue, pues se tuvo esta planta, ¿verdad? Desafortunadamente, pues hubo muchas emisiones que dejaron, pues, huella, que dejaron rastro de todo esto en áreas específicas aquí en el Puget Sound. Pero el problema fue que años más tarde, pues, las autoridades de salud, la comunidad científica se dieron cuenta de lo terrible que estos materiales de la tabla periódica, el arsénico y el plomo, pues hacen en la salud, ¿no? Son pues responsables por enfermedades degenerativas como la diabetes, el cáncer, pues tantas otras cosas asociadas a todo esto. Y antes, pues no se sabía. Entonces, pues cuando pues se logró saber que esto podía causar tanto daño, pues era demasiado tarde, porque ya había pues tierra ya contaminada, y pues aunque se desmanteló esta planta, se quitó, ¿verdad? Para bien, pero de todas maneras pues dejó muchos rastros de todo esto. El Departamento de Salud, pues ahora tiene un programa en donde se puede probar, se puede mandar a hacer una prueba de qué tan seguro está su terreno, ¿verdad? Donde usted tiene su casa. Probar, pues obviamente afuera, ya sea su jardín, ¿no? Su área que a lo mejor está usted pensando en construir otra cosa más adelante y va a tener que hacer movimiento de tierra. Pues ellos tienen este programa en el que toman muestras de la tierra, se la llevan para que las estudie el laboratorio y le ofrezcan un reporte de cómo está la calidad de su tierra en cuanto a estos materiales, ¿verdad? Que no sea peligroso, para que usted pues tome las precauciones, ¿no? Y además de eso, además de que es gratuito, es rápido, más o menos toma entre 15 y 20 minutos hacer estas tomas. Además de eso, también pues ellos pueden reemplazarle hasta más o menos un pie de profundidad en tierra, ¿no? Lo que hacen es, pues le remueven parte de la tierra que está contaminada y traen tierra pues limpia, ¿no? Y sin contaminantes, para que usted pueda entonces estar más protegido, más seguro. Una de las fotografías, una de las cosas también muy importantes es cuando nosotros mismos, cuando nuestros hijos, nuestras hijas salen a los jardines y sabemos que a todos nos encanta jugar con tierra cuando somos niños, ¿verdad? Y pues también cuando somos adultos, también pues eso es muy bueno, ¿verdad? Es una muy buena terapia, es una muy buena actividad también. Los vegetales salen pues mucho mejor si los cultivamos nosotros, ¿verdad? sobre todo sin químicos, sin pesticidas, ¿verdad? Podemos tener una hortaliza en la parte de atrás de nuestra casa, pero tenemos que tomar precauciones cuando hacemos eso, ¿no? Si estamos practicando la jardinería, lo mejor es usar guantes que se puedan, de los que podamos deshacernos después, guantes que tengamos designados para la jardinería, cuando nuestros hijos salen a jugar con la tierra o tienen juguetes afuera que están en el jardín, que pues se logran ensuciar un poquito con tierrita, pues muy importante que les digamos que no los chupen, ¿verdad? Que no se chupen las manos con la tierra y que antes de regresar, pues, o más bien antes de tomar alimentos o antes de regresar a las otras actividades, pues hay que pasar por el baño y hay que darse una buena lavada, quitarse todos los residuos de tierra que podamos tener en nuestras manos. Entonces, mientras eso sucede, pues es bueno que hagamos esa prueba, que le demos una llamadita a Walt para que pueda él ir con su equipo y hacer esta prueba. Y bueno, pues no se preocupen si no tuvieron la oportunidad de tomar sus datos cuando él los mencionó, porque los vamos a incluir en esta presentación en el chat en unos minutos más. Así que pues vamos a continuar con todo esto. Well, one of the questions that I have for you is how long it takes for the contaminants, for how long they remain. Is that like for many, many years that they remain in the ground before thinking that maybe water and other elements will taken more down into the,
right,
deep in the ground?
What it is that depending on where the contamination landed, if it landed on sand or gravel, it would leach, through into the soil. But if it lands on topsoil where there's grass growing or, that kind of thing, like a topsoil, organic topsoil, it adheres to the topsoil. So therefore it stays right there. And it's going to be there for, I don't want to say forever, but I mean, it would be there. It's like an indefinite period because of that.
Right.
Right.
Because what you were mentioning, about the our classes of chemistry, those are elements that they don't like decompose, so they don't break, exactly, right?
They don't break down. No.
Wow.
No.
For those that maybe are in the area, but maybe their property is being covered with different dirt now, maybe they don't have to worry too much until maybe they decided to build something, right? Something that's going to make them dig deep in the ground and maybe remove some of that. That's when they have to maybe give you a call and say, well, can you give us a hand here making a test,
right.
Something like that.
Okay. That's a good point. You'd mentioned if the soil's been covered, or say, for instance, the soil has been the landscaping where that top 6 inches of soil has been moved around or mixed in with other soil, there's a lot less chance of us finding any contamination in that soil. The soil that we usually find contamination in is soil that hasn't been disturbed since back when the smelter was actually in operation back in the in the 80s and before. So it's a good point. And what we do recommend is if you have an area that you're concerned about, you could cover it with a mulch or cover it with soil to form a barrier from that what we call the old soil, the soil that's been there in the past.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow, this has been very, very eye-opener information, for our community. I get to see maybe a flyer somewhere sometime, maybe when I visit the Family Support Center in East Tacoma, but yes. I really didn't stop to put attention into how, right. Important is. So, do you have a little bit more information to
sure.
give?
I have
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, let me just show you a couple things. This is just what we call this is slag. This was another byproduct of the smelter after they melted out the arsenic or they melted out the copper. Then there was a leftover, and I want to point this in here because sometimes people use it in landscaping for decoration to make it look like lava rock or something like that. If you see these in your garden or in a landscape, I would just actually put them in the trash. They're not that dangerous, other than if you were to handle it and you could get arsenic and lead on your hands. That's really, and if you're in the landscaping business, if you see these, you might recommend to a homeowner to, get rid of that. You can tell it just looks like, lava rock like that.
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty. I won't blame people for trying to use it to decorate, the garden.
Exactly, but that's right. It looks pretty, and that's why they used it. Okay. And so children are at the greatest risk, and the reason for that is because kids their bodies are smaller, they're growing. If they are intaking any arsenic and lead, that can develop within their bodies. Lead, of course, there's no level of lead that's safe for a child to have. So sometimes we get contacted by pediatricians that a child has a higher lead level, and maybe we can go look at the home and see if there's anything out in the yard that the child might have come in contact with that's lead related. And of course, lead can be on an older home inside too. They used lead in paints up until the 70s, mid 70s. So there was lead used in paint. So sometimes when paint is chipping off, it could come in, people could come in contact with it there. So we're really always concerned about, children coming in contact with it. Some of the things that I had mentioned, I won't go into this too much, but there is some soil that's being replaced, up in the north end. We do offer some technical assistance, like we'll come to your home and give advice as to what you can do with it. And then of course we're do presentations like this just to let people know that, there's contamination out there. But here are the things I would like to kind of emphasize, some of the healthy actions we can take when you're outside, wearing gloves, just so you're not getting the contamination on your hands perhaps, and then maybe bring it into the house, or if you were to touch your mouth or whatever. Grow produce or grow your vegetables in a raised bed. In other words, a box that you grow it in, where you bring in soil from a soil distributor, where you don't have, that soil has been tested, so you could grow your vegetables in that and not grow them in the soil that's in the yard. Or and then cover bare patches of dirt. So if there's a place where the dog's been running, the kids have been running, or there's soil that's exposed, then it becomes dusty, especially in the summer when it's dry. That would be a good place to put down some kind of mulch or something over that to keep your family from coming in contact with it. Then also like dampening the soil if you're working in it. So if you're doing some landscaping or whatever, you could spray the soil down so it doesn't become dusty, and therefore it might you might inhale it. Then washing fruits and vegetables real well when they come in from outside. Sometimes we get a question about, well, is it inside the fruit or vegetable? Does it get in the soil and come up into the plant? No, not necessarily. It's very, very minute traces, if at all. So there really isn't a concern there. The more of a concern would be what's on the vegetables and the fruits from the dirt that you get from the garden, but making sure you're washing really well. And the other thing is to do, of course, wear a dust mask if you're going to be working out in the soil. Really, really good thing to do, so you're not inhaling any of that arsenic and lead. So those are what we call our healthy actions.
Okay, bueno, lo que nos está compartiendo Walt en este segmento, yo comencé preguntándole qué tanto tiempo se lleva pues estos elementos para descomponerse, ¿no? Pues ya sea que nuestra tierra está contaminada, pero vamos a suponer que han pasado ya 10, 20 años, podemos suponer que todavía tenemos tierra contaminada, que a lo mejor la lluvia, los elementos, ¿no? Ya se llevaron estas partículas más adentro. Y la verdad no es que, nos dice Walt que no, la verdad es que pues así como lo mencionaba él hace unos minutos atrás también, es que estos componentes que podemos encontrar en la tabla periódica, recordando nuestras clases de química, estas partículas o estas cosas no se descomponen, en realidad nunca logran realmente tener una degeneración o una descomposición. estamos hablando de plomo y arsénico. Entonces, pues desafortunadamente, pues son elementos que permanecen por muchos años, ¿verdad? Tal vez cientos de años, miles de años. Y la idea es, pues, más bien tomar acción nosotros que no vamos a vivir tantos años, ¿no? En protegernos y mantener una vida saludable. Nos mencionó también acerca de unas piedras muy interesantes, ¿verdad? Nos mostró aquí a través de su presentación una fotografía de una piedra que pudiera ser muy tentativa para mantenerla como una piedra de adorno en nuestros jardines, ¿no? Para aquellos que se dedican a embellecer los jardines, ¿no? El landscaping. La recomendación es que si la ven, bueno, la pueden pues mejor quitar, ¿verdad? Porque tal vez ya lavada, ya pues podríamos decir que ya no genera a lo mejor un peligro o una contaminación que se pueda respirar, pero si alguien pues más adelante llega, la toca, la manosea o lo que sea, entonces sí puede llegar a todavía desprender partículas. Es lo que quedó de esta fundición, ¿no? Que se tuvo aquí en Tacoma hace muchos años. Y bueno, pues él recomienda que mejor se quite, se tire a la basura o se llame, pues ya sea a ellos, ¿verdad? Que son los profesionales para saber qué se puede hacer con esa piedra, pero mejor trate de no manipularla por usted mismo. También nos está explicando, nos dio una lista de cosas que pues es importante tomar en cuenta. Es importante, por ejemplo, usar guantes, ¿no? Cuando uno sale a la tierra a jugar, pues, a plantar, a embellecer el jardín, como les digo. Tal vez los niños no los van a aceptar, pero ahí tenemos que ser muy cuidadosos de que se laven sus manitas bien, ¿no? Si podemos ayudarles, sería mucho mejor. Se pueden también crecer vegetales en unas cajas, ¿no? En lo que le llaman aquí, pues, unas camitas que se hacen con madera, y esos, pues, quedan prácticamente por arriba de lo que viene siendo el terreno, ¿verdad? Que potencialmente podría estar contaminado con esta tierra. Entonces, ya con tierra que podamos tener mucho mejor para crecer nuestros vegetales o nuestras flores, ¿no? Como pudiera ser, pues, el componente que es gratuito, la ciudad lo ofrece, como el tagro, por ejemplo, para los vegetales. Se puede poner en estas camas, en estas cajas, para poder crecer los vegetales en la parte de nuestros jardines sin temor a que estén contaminados, ¿no? También, pues, si hay áreas que están expuestas, ¿verdad? Si tenemos áreas que no tienen pasto, no tienen maleza, o nos deshicimos de esa maleza este verano, lo mejor es que si no las vamos a usar, si hay peligro de que nuestras mascotas o nuestros hijos, nosotros mismos podamos pisar esa área del terreno, lo mejor es cubrirlo con algo, ¿verdad? Ya sea poner madera, poner una lona, poner algo que pueda cubrir esa tierra mientras se llega el momento de hacer una prueba, un test, mientras se puede remover y cubrir con tierra pues descontaminada o no contaminada. También rápidamente déjenme decirles que hay que lavar bien las frutas y las verduras, también que vengan de nuestros jardines que no han sido todavía, pues que no tienen esa prueba. De no estar contaminados, lavarlas pero muy bien. También, aunque estuvieran por fuera en esas camas que les platico, y tenemos un terreno que pues pudiera estar contaminado, pues recuerden que el aire que sopla, todos los elementos que tienen que ver que pudieran traer pues a tierra contaminada hacia nuestros vegetales, hacia las flores que tal vez vamos a traer adentro de la casa, pues estén también pues lo más limpias posibles. Entonces, utilizar una máscara cuando estamos trabajando en estas áreas, una máscara para polvo sería también bastante útil. Okay, well, please go ahead and keep going.
Okay, thank you. Well, those are the things that, outdoor, but some of the things that you can do indoor when you come in from working outside or playing outside is, of course, wash your hands really well. And of course, that goes along with with anything from the health department would recommend, before you're eating or whatever. But as soon as you come into the house after working outside, wash your hands off really well. Use a scrub brush to clean your fingernails, of course, to get that dirt out from underneath the fingernails, both the adult hands and of course little kids' hands too. And then maybe leave your shoes at the door is a really good idea. And that way you're not tracking in dirt into the floor and onto the floor that would eventually become dust that you could inhale or breathe. And then wiping pets' paws too is kind of important, because dogs, especially you go out, they might dig out in the yard. When they come back in the house, it would be great to have a little rag right out the door. And that's what I do with my dog. I have a little rag right by the door, and I wipe his feet when he comes in. And then wash toys too. Toys that have been outside or inside too, of course. Washing them frequently, give them a good wash. And then damp dust and vacuum the dust that will settle on the windowsills or around inside the house. Dusting that and getting that picked up, or taking that dust off the floor with a vacuum. And then also we always recommend eating a healthy diet too. I mean, we know that one of the ways that we can fight off long-term, diseases like cancers and things like that would be to really eat healthy, so your body is really has the nutrients it needs to fight things off for you. So those are just some of what we call the healthy actions that you can take.
Right. So for those that they live in apartments, maybe they're new in the area, they live in the apartments, should they be concerned when maybe visiting, like, for example, Point Defiance or a public park, about and take care of also the actions on this list?
Absolutely. I think that's a good point. It's not just what might be in your yard, but it could be Point Defiance Park. And of course, Point Defiance is very close to where the old smelter was. We'd still recommend, we want kids and people to get outside and play. But if you just follow some of the healthy actions, like say, making sure that you're just, washing your hands really well and maybe kicking your shoes off before you come in the house. Those are good ways to keep from getting any of that contamination in your house. And also, perhaps, we always talk about hand sanitizers, and the hand sanitizers are good for taking off germs, but of course, that really doesn't remove dirt so much. So we still recommend hand sanitizer, but there's really nothing better for the dirt on your hands than, of course, some warm water and soap. Very much so.
Ok, lo que yo le pregunté a Walt después de ver esta lista, ¿verdad? Que incluye nuevamente lavarse las manos bien. Esto es las cosas que vamos a hacer cuando vamos a entrar a nuestra casa. Es lavarnos las manos bien, utilizar un cepillito para poder limpiar bien entre las uñas, sobre todo donde se puede llegar a quedar la tierrita, los contaminantes, todo eso. Entonces, dejar los zapatos de preferencia afuera, ¿no? Si usted vive en una casa, tiene un área de descanso así, pues junto a su puerta, ¿verdad? Y si puede poner un mueblecito donde se puedan poner los zapatos, bueno, pues no solamente van a estar, ¿verdad?, oreándose, sino también va a evitar que usted meta en las suelas estos contaminantes, estos fragmentos de esa tierra con las partículas de las cuales hablamos, ¿no? Lavar los juguetes que se utilizan afuera también es muy buena recomendación. Limpiarle las patitas a las mascotas que entran y salen, ¿verdad? Nuestros perros, nuestros gatos o cualquier otra mascota que pues usted lleve o que entra y salga, ¿verdad? Que esté expuesto al contacto con la tierra, ¿no? Nuestros perritos tienden mucho a rascar en los terrenos, ¿no? Es una cuestión de su comportamiento, ¿no? De lo que ellos hacen, y pues es bueno también estarles dando una pasadita en las patitas para que no metan a su casa estos posibles contaminantes. También, pues, a estar aspirando o también pues quitando el polvito de las áreas en donde se empieza a formar, también pues es algo, ¿verdad?, que nos va a ayudar a no tener que estar respirando eso. Comer saludable, independientemente de todo, ¿verdad?, es lo que va a mantener a nuestro cuerpo pues con buena salud, con pues nuestro sistema inmune alerta, ¿no?, y listo para repeler pues a cualquier ayudar a combatir enfermedades pues degenerativas y bueno, todo eso. También pregunté, las personas que vivimos o que viven en departamento, también cuando visitan parques, por ejemplo, como el Point Defiance, que es un parque muy bonito, debemos de tomar en cuenta todo eso, y nos dice sí. La respuesta es definitivamente queremos que la gente salga a disfrutar, ¿no?, de las actividades al aire libre, pero también queremos que pues estén protegidos, sobre todo el Point Defiance que está en un área muy, pero muy cerca donde fue pues el epicentro de todo este problema, ¿verdad?, que se generó. No se puede remediar el pasado, pero sí podemos tomar acciones para tener pues un futuro más saludable. Okay, well, keep going, please.
Okay. Well, one thing I wanted to show you is I had mentioned raised beds just to give you an example, and I think most folks know what they are. But I thought I'd show this just so you know. A raised bed, it would be something that you would build a box, or you could buy these too, and then bring in soil from a soil company to do your gardening. And then between the rows, you can actually put down mulch or something to form that barrier there too. So that's just an example of that.
Okay.
So I think that's kind of everything I want to say, other than the smelter's gone, and some of us remember, if you've been here long enough, back in 1993 when they imploded the smokestack. It came down and it's gone, and now the new development is down there, but the arsenic and lead still remains in the soil, and that's why I really appreciate you letting me come on and talk about it here this morning. And here's some of my contact information too, or if you have any other questions.
No, I think it's been a very, very great explanation of everything, the story. And like I said in Spanish, that we cannot change the past, it's unfortunately that we have to live in a place that is being exposed, is being contaminated, par necessity, par ignorance, par lack of knowledge, anything. We cannot change the past, but we can definitely take actions for having a more healthy future, for everyone. And this is a very, very good initiative. So thank you, Walt, for this
Sure.
Great presentation. Thank you, the Department of Ecology in Washington. Thanks to the Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department also for putting together this initiative, this program, for having the information, but also for presenting solutions, for having the way to access to those dirt tests that are going to be important, are going to help us to live with a more peace, in our, once we know that
Right.
maybe our grounds are not contaminated. So, and if they do, then we have an option. We have ways to take action. So,
Right.
very, very important. So, muchísimas gracias a todos aquellos que nos han acompañado. Aquí está la información, el contacto de Walt, que su teléfono es el 253-405-6710. Él no habla español, pero seguro que encuentra las respuestas en español que ustedes van a necesitar. Así que también si alguien se quedó con alguna pregunta después de estar viendo esta presentación, si quiere, háganosla llegar a nuestro estudio aquí al 253-777-8864 y con mucho gusto vamos a contactar a Walt para poder conseguirle esa respuesta que usted necesita, algún recurso que usted necesite o se le haya ocurrido para atender este problema, ¿no? Así que muchas gracias de verdad por su paciencia, aquellos que han visto esta presentación, escuchado esta presentación en inglés, en español. A veces cuando estamos practicando un segundo idioma, a veces nos resulta un poquito difícil, nos desesperamos a veces, pero la verdad es que es una cuestión también de paciencia y gracias por confiar en nosotros, por seguir este programa, esta señal. Así que thank you so much, Walt, for this presentation. Thanks again.
Sure.
We are going to be in contact with you in case a question comes up, from our audience, to get from you, to try to get the answer, and keep it going. So any updates in the future, please feel free. You are more than welcome to contact us. This station is just for that, just to
Great.
provide with the information the community needs. We entertain, we let's say we do many things, we update, we pass this important information. We try also to support social justice, in any way. So that's exactly why we put together this radio station, So,
Great.
yeah.
Let me mention too that we have we have flyers, brochures with this information, and we have them printed in Spanish. So if you have an event, or if somebody, one of your listeners has an event and would like to pass out some of those, just contact me and I'll get you a packet of those that we can get to you for sure. And you can call me or email. And then of course you could also go on our Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department website. If you go on there, look for Dirt Alert, and there'll be information on there. But I'm more than happy to give those brochures out to you or do presentations to other groups if they want to.
Ok, bien, pues ahí está. Walt nos acaba de decir, tengo material en español, tengo algunos brochets que traen toda esta información que dimos el día de hoy en español. Y si alguien tiene por ahí algún grupito, tal vez usted es miembro de una congregación, de una iglesia, quiere invitar a Walt a hablarle a su audiencia, a su congregación, a tener una interacción con ellos. La verdad es que él es fabuloso que él esté disponible, que el Departamento de Salud, ¿verdad?, nos los pueda prestar un ratito para que pueda hacer esta presentación. Así que eso es fabuloso. Puede encontrar también esos folletitos en los diferentes lugares que tienen que ver, que reciben información del Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department, como es, por ejemplo, los centros de sociales, ¿verdad? Los community centers, los centros donde hay apoyo a la familia y todo eso. Así que, magnífico. Okay, well, with this, we say goodbye, but not forever. Let's please hear us, connect with us next week. We're going to have another show with maybe another person that is going to keep bringing information as important as this for the community. So thank you so much. Enjoy your dinner, everybody, if you're about to have it. And Walt, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We will keep in touch.